Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of the GQM Garage Show. Tonight we're going to be picking up with Project AP1 S2000. What we're going to be doing tonight is the new wheel and tire package. For my wheel choice, I went with a set of Advent RG2s. If you haven't noticed, for those of you who follow me on Instagram and my previous YouTube videos, this is one of my most favorite wheel ever in the world. It's just a very classic spoke design, but I love the concave to it, and it's simple, but it really works well on a lot of cars in my opinion, especially cars that are pointier, with that like sports cars that have a more pointy shade to them, like the S2000 in particular. I went with a set of them in 17 by 8.5 in the rear with a positive 50 millimeter offset, and 17 by 7.5 in the front with a positive 45 millimeter offset. I did this because I don't want to put gigantic tires. I don't want to squeeze anything in there that I don't have to. These are gonna be a set of street wheels and tires, and I didn't really want to do any aggressive rolling or pulling of the bodywork. I'm a big fan of the stock bodywork on the S2000, and I didn't really want to touch that if I didn't have to. But the other part of it is that the car doesn't make a ton of power, so I don't really warrant a bigger tire setup. So for the tires, they're a set of Continental Extreme Contact DWs, and I haven't run a set of Continentals before. These were a good price online during Black Friday. I bought two sets of these, another set for my BMW as well. They're 340 tread wear rating. This is supposed to be like a Michelin Pilot Super Sport competitor, but with less grip, and that's a good thing in my opinion. I don't want too much grip for this car, especially for my street setup. I want to be able to let the rear move around, kind of drive the car with the throttle, and just really play with the chassis and the balance of it. So grippier tires on the street, they require you to go much more faster to kind of exploit the limits of it. And I'm getting to the point in my life where I just want to really enjoy the drive. I'm back to the really just driver and machine, and want to play with the balance and be able to have fun. So that's why I went with this setup. I really wanted the wheels, especially in silver, to go with the Silverstone metallic color of the car. I've seen some pictures of it in the past. Not a lot of people run this setup, but it looks gorgeous in my opinion, and I'm excited to see it for the first time mounted on the car. I've had these sitting in my garage all week, and I haven't mounted them because I wanted to wait to make this video, so I'm really excited to kind of see what the result is going to be. And speaking of Project AP1 S2000, I haven't really done too many updates on this car, and I know it's been a while, and a lot of you guys have asked me kind of what's the deal with it, where does it stand? So let's give an update on the car itself. We'll start with, I guess, the body. So this car was my daily driver. I bought it at 88,000 miles. It's a 2003 AP1, and I daily drove it to about 125,000 miles on the clock. I had a valve seal failure. They wore out pretty good, and they were leaking a lot, so the car was smoking. And at that point, I called it quits for daily duties. I pulled the motor, took the head apart, and refreshed everything. Starting with the, I milled it. Just like I did on my all-motor Miata, because I wanted the bump compression on it. So you can't take as much off of the S2000 cylinder head. There's not nearly as much clearance. And I took 12 thousandths off of the head. I matched that with a spoon head gasket, which I think is 15 thousandths thicker. So I may be mixing those numbers up, but the total off is 27 thousandths. And that bumps compression up roughly from 11 to 1 to around 11.7 to 1. While it was in the head, I upgraded the camshafts with a set of Brian Crowder Stage 2 camshafts, and the whole valve train's been replaced for SuperTech components. So they're dual valve springs combined with their titanium retainers, and I replaced the valve keepers as well, just as a kind of a precautionary with the mileage being up that high. Compression is pretty solid on the block, not too much variance among the cylinders, but after compression testing the whole setup, after putting it all back together, it was in the ballpark of 250 per cylinder across the board, so I was pretty happy with those numbers. We'll start with the breathing mods for the motor on the exterior. This is a Jay's Racing style carbon intake setup. It runs to a Skunk 2 70mm throttle body. I port match the intake manifold opening here to mate with the throttle body and smooth out as best I could going into it. This is a big restriction in the F-Series motors. I'd like to move to a set of throttle bodies down the road, so that's going to be something to look forward to. On the exhaust side of the setup, it runs into a J's Racing SPL header. To there, it runs to a T1R 70mm resonated test pipe, and then the catback section of the exhaust is an NVIDIA Q300, but it's modified quite a bit. I cut the OEM or the NVIDIA Bullet resonator that comes with it just because it's pretty tiny, and this car is already making more noise, especially with the cams and everything opened up. So I welded in a bigger resonator, and I got rid of the megaphone tips and created a set of my own tips with out of Schedule 40, and they're just straight through, so it's not really giving that megaphone effect. And that actually made quite a big difference. I was really surprised how much that dictated the exhaust note. And then going into the mufflers, the exhaust is supposed to be 70mm, and at the 60mm, or I mean at the Y split, it's supposed to go to 60mm per runner, and it does. But once you enter into the muffler canisters, where the tips are welded in, the pipes are smaller. They're like 50mm on each side. So I went in there with a Dremel and cut out the inside pipes and made them true 60mm all the way out because I didn't want to have any restrictions in flow. So to control everything, there's a Haltech standalone ECU in here. It's their plug-and-play series. I think it's the Platinum series for the S2000. Accessory pulleys, I have lightened alternator and water pump pulleys, and the crank pulley is a fluid damper silicone-filled unit to smooth everything out. And just because at 125,000 miles, I'm sure the factory damper with the rubber was kind of getting hard on it. For cooling mods, I have a Koyo radiator for it with a Koyo radiator cap, and of course the carbon radiator cover or shroud there, whatever you would like to call that. And last but not least, Cusco oil catch can, and just a lot of touch-up bits and cleaning up the engine bay. Moving on to the suspension, it has a set of Tane Mono Sport dampers. This is their monotube setup. I did want a monotube damper in particular. I didn't want to do twin tube stuff again. I have Tane Flex on all the other cars. I want something a little bit more for this. And other than that, in the suspension, I threw in a set of blocks, half shaft spacers for the rear axles for lowering the car. I have a bump steer kit for the front, but I haven't put it on yet because it really doesn't bump steer that bad at the height that I have. I only lowered it about an inch, so it's pretty conservative on the ride height. Other than that, though, the car is mostly stock. I added an aftermarket steering wheel and quick release. It's a Momo Mod 78 to the interior, but everything else is factory. So this is a great platform to move forward and really kind of dig in and see what the car is going to be capable of at fully developed, kind of like my Miata builds are. So I'm really excited to go down that road. Right now, as the engine sits, everything dynoed at 232 horsepower to the wheels and 158 pound-feet of torque, if I remember correctly, and that was on a dyno jet standard correction factor. So I think there's still a little bit more power to be had, especially with the intake manifold on the car. And then once the block gets tired, this is something I'd like to maybe move to a 2.4 liter setup and see what I can do naturally aspirated. So yeah, I'm really excited, and I'm excited to start making the car more personal. The AP1 body is much more subtle, so I'm excited to do some aero bits on it, the wheels especially, and I can't wait to see how they're going to look. And just really kind of making the car my own. It's been kind of like a wolf in sheep's clothing. It screams, absolutely screams. But it looks like a stock S2000 from the outside. So now I'm going to kind of move away from that and give my personal touches to it. So let's put these freaking wheels on because I can't wait to see what they're going to look like. So good. Oh, I love these wheels. So good. So in this sizing, I'm pretty sure that this was S2000 sizing made by Yokohama when they produced these wheels, because these literally fit the stock body panels perfectly. And if you see the amount of flushness that they have, both front and rear, I mean, they are like right there. And they're actually almost sticking out a little bit. It's like the fitment is like spot on perfect, and I may have to roll the fender slightly, but I probably won't really have to worry about rubbing, and that's clutch. So I'm very, very, very excited. I'm like, it's just so cool to see them on the car. I love watching a project really start to develop into your vision. I definitely got a Ricer Chub on going right now looking at these, and I can't wait to move on to the next step this year. So bam, wheels done. Who knows what we're going to move on to next, but we'll get there.